morning, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and the goal of our show is to explore a wide range of topics that challenge us to see ourselves, our community, and the world around us, that get us thinking, get us talking, get us wondering, get us talking about stuff, and connected. Perhaps inspired or challenged just to do a bit more because we made the connection. So welcome. We're glad you're here today. And I have Rick Bernardo. Rick, we have been doing this for over a year now for having you as my co-host.
I've been here for most of that time.
Most of that time, yes. You have. The last year.
Been, mostly here for all of that time.
You've always partnered with all the shows, so I really appreciate that. Wanted to do a shout out for all the work that you do. And we have a great show today planned. Planned and open, what I love. We plan things and we keep them open. Yvette Erasmus, Dr. Yvette Erasmus is with us today. This is her third show with us, and we'll have another show in September. It's a series that has gotten lots of good reviews and feedback. Yvette helps us look at healthy communication and relationship skills for living our most authentic and empowered and connected self. Rick, I know that it's meant a lot to you, these last three shows. I want to share a little bit about how it's impacted you.
Well, what I have loved in the conversations is this overall sense of, I've got many years of teaching ethics and leadership and organizational development. And there's always like lessons and practices and point A and point B. What I've experienced when I listen to Yvette is this sort of a channeling from the guts of all of that. So it's kind of like, a jazz musician will go off in whatever area is going to work with everybody else in the moment. But in order to do that, they need the whole background of like, what are the possibilities? What's going to work in this context? So that's
I love that. And, a jazz musician has to be very well trained to be able to go to new places and explore them.
Yeah. And the other thing that to bring out of the woodwork, not that there was wood in that, but I was wooden at the point of starting this. So power, the idea of what is powerful in our lives, our overall culture conveys messages about power, meaning measurement and control, and there's a whole paradigm there that every deep tradition that makes us valuable and human says, no, that's really dangerous. Power is how we inspire, how we achieve peace within and without, that kind of conversation. How we know what's sacred no matter what is happening, or whether somebody's being productive or not in the moment. So there's that. I got that from Yvette.
Well, Yvette, I asked Rick to do that because I want to encourage our audience to call in and talk directly with you today.
Oh, great. Lovely.
Yvette has a Master's of Science, Clinical Psychology, and a doctorate in Clinical Psychology. But like our friend Rick said, she does these wonderful riffs. The riffs on
the riffs on life and relationships and who we are.
Exactly. What I loved is how you can take processes and inner maps that are really self-sabotaging and be able to look at what that is, and then ultimately to look at the deeper connection and hopefully meaning and purpose.
Well, it's so lovely to be here again. I really enjoy these conversations with you on Saturday mornings, so thank you.
We do have a caller, and I want to, before we go to our caller, I want to let folks know that they can call us today. The number is 952-946-6205. Again, I'm going to give you that number, 952-946-6205. We've got an engineer. We've got Dan waiting for your call. I want you to think about before you call in about how you want to connect more and fight less. How to have healthy relationships that are based in choice and compassion and connection instead of being perhaps, fearful or have judgment and control. So some things to think about calling in. You might feel stuck and you want to feel unstuck. You might feel like you have a hard time communicating, and you want to communicate with more clarity and confidence. You may feel like you're in an unhealthy relationship. So how do you build that healthier relationship? Or maybe you're just feeling isolated. After getting out of COVID, we were all in isolation. Have you felt good about the transition back to being with people? Or perhaps you feel like you're just kind of playing a role and you're not who you want to be. And we talk about authentic. Do you feel like you are rooted in your authenticity? And there's a few others, but those hopefully will get you started in thinking about why to call in and what you might want to be asking Yvette. And with that, we've got Laura on the line. Laura, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, thanks. So Yvette and I worked together like 20 years ago. I did your compassion communication meetings, and we did a conscious group, and it was very, very wonderful for my life. So I appreciate your work quite deeply. But I had one thing that's a little funny. I had a conflict coming up in my life, and this person said back to me, "You're hearing soundbite blame, and I'm trying to speak in sentences here."
I love that.
I do too, because we get, and just to be kind to myself, because we're all, whatever is happening in our culture, but we get our wound up and we hear blame and shame, and it's all over the place, and you're just reacting, and then how to actually slow down. So I want to hear tips on how do I slow down, how do I be a better listener, both to myself and to others.
Okay. So how to be a better listener and how to slow down. You take a deep breath. You set an intention. I think that idea of how to do it differently always starts with having an intention to do it differently. So we always begin there, setting a very clear intention. I can see the thing that I have been doing. I want to stop doing that, and I want to start doing what? So we want to get very clear on what we're going to start doing. So we want like a replacement activity, not just a stop. Otherwise, we're left with a void. And then the next piece is really learning to regulate our nervous systems. Because when our nervous systems are activated and we're in a state of fear or anxiety or worry or anger, we're much more likely to move into our habitual ways of responding, which tend to be defensive. And defensive psychologically in this culture means shame and blame of some kind. Right? And judgment, lots and lots of judgment. That's what we like to share with each other. And so if I know that I want to stop that, then what do I want to do instead? I want to really connect deeply with what's important to me and how I'm feeling about things and what I'm thinking about things so that I can come from a place of self-responsibility in my reaction and choicefulness. And then I also want to really be listening through the other person's criticism and judgments into what matters to them. So I'm listening for what is important to the other person, and I'm putting on hold the delivery in the short term. We can come back to more skillful delivery later, but if I'm listening for connection, I'm listening for the pain, I'm listening for the fear, I'm listening for what is important to them that they're trying to tell me. How does that land as a start?
Laura?
Oh, I think that's great, because I think so often the cultural norm is to almost play ping pong right away. Well, you said this, why I said this, why I said that. And so instead of, we can choose a different game, and we can choose to try to really understand and just free ourselves from our own shame, but so that we are able to listen to the other person. Because if you're stuck in your own scripts, it's hard, but having that sovereignty or that agency to actually be able to be in peace with ourselves first, right?
100%.
And then be able to listen to the other person.
Yeah. I often think of it like lifting weights in a gym, Like I can see the capacity, the strength that I want to have, that I want to develop. And then I really just go and do the reps. And so when you're thinking about like, you had mentioned the old scripts that keep coming up, or the ways that I habitually and unconsciously speak, I'll give you an example from my own life that happened just very recently. I was trying to talk to my partner about something that was really important to me, but I was a little activated and I was coming from my own pain. And so the phrase that I kept using was, this is not going to work for me. This doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. And it was super triggering because, what he's hearing on the other side of that is, I'm done. I'm done with you. You're not good enough. We're finished. And that's not at all what I mean. What I'm meaning, I'm trying to show the importance of it. But had I just been able to say, hey, this thing that's happening is beginning to build up and it's starting to hurt my feelings, and it's important to me that we find a different way of doing this, that would have been much easier for him to hear and much more aligned with what I actually meant, right? But those things take consciousness and intention and practice. And I think, at least for myself, being very, very self-compassionate and graceful with myself, having some graciousness that we don't have to get it right, we're just practicing, is a really, really important piece of this.
I have a follow-up question about triggering.
Yeah.
It seems to me from what your example and what Laura's been talking about as well, is that if we know our own triggers, that may be helpful. That we know, wait a minute, I can take a pause because I know that's a trigger. But then it's also kind of cool to get to know someone else's trigger so that you can be sensitive about it.
Yeah.
And instead of being in that place of conflict, it's really kind of a search and find for triggers.
Yeah.
And being able to identify those triggers so that you can both do a exhale of okay, those were just triggers. Those are just, taking us to another place.
Right. So
and not being in the moment.
Let's identify, let's put a little more language around trigger. I think the way you're using that word in that moment is, what are the places that I'm feeling some sensitivity? A little bit, these are the places where I'm likely to get a little bit more hurt or a little bit more scared or a little bit more reactive. And then that can also, because trigger is often used to sort of point to moments where past trauma, past wounds also get activated and it can get very big. So if I get so triggered that I become hijacked and flooded by my nervous system, those are the times we actually take a time out. But if I'm just feeling a little mildly activated and, this is a sensitive spot for me, or this is a place where this particular kind of miscommunication is quite painful for me in a way that it might be not be for other people. I think that's also, another way we can use that word.
I'm fascinated because you've brought it up in other sessions in terms of being able to do that identification of what that is. Is there's a freedom in that?
Absolutely.
There is a sense of you've gotten unstuck out of a pattern, and it becomes almost, how can I find another? Where am I sensitive, and what is that about? And when I think you can let go of some of that and just go, just the recognition. I'm sensitive about that.
Exactly.
That scares me.
I'm going to hop in here just for a sec.
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
Both studied a little bit with Marshall Rosenberg, and he said, play with your pain. And that's what I heard from you, Lori, is that play with your pain.
Yeah.
Yvette, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that you bring in Marshall Rosenberg. I love bringing him in everywhere we can, because the other thing he says that I'm going to add to that is the only thing people are ever saying is some version of a please or some version of a thank you. All communication boils down to a please or a thank you. And so, and then let's add on to that, if we can be playful with pain, if we can learn how to enjoy people's anger. And I think what he's pointing to there is getting into an internal state in yourself where you manage your own regulation and your own safety to the degree that you see somebody else being angry as simply an expression of their pain, an expression of something that's important to them. And then you can start developing new ways of connecting with that instead of either trying to control it, dismiss it, make it go away, judge it, make it worse, suppress it. We want to actually, I think the practice of nonviolence, as I understand it and as I teach it, is really about working with whatever is arising in myself and another person in a connected, understanding, and compassionate way. But it is the essence of working with everything. And that's a huge courage practice because it invites us to work with our fears and not be controlled by our fears, be, living from a different place.
Thank you, Laura, for calling in. We really appreciate your insights and your question. And if you'd like to call in, please feel free at 952-946-6205. We do need to go to a break, but I want to make sure that you all have Yvette's website, which is terrific. Every time I go to the website, I've told her I learned something new, or I find a new place on it. I go, oh, that's cool. I'm going to look at this today. It's Yvette, spelled with a Y, YVETTEERASMUS.com. Wonderful website if you'd like to learn more about the work that Yvette does. And you can stay tuned for our next segment. We already have another caller that's waiting online, and we'll bring that caller in right away in the second segment. So stay with us. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. Rick Bernardo is with me today as my co-host.
Hi.
And we have Dr. Yvette Erasmus, who is a terrific, thoughtful, and engaging individual who draws from many different perspectives. But she does also have a Master's of Science, clinical psychology, and a doctorate in clinical psychology. What I love is that you often do draw back to the science of it. You often draw back about how the brain reacts, which I love. I love having both sort of the metaphors you use and the artistic frame, but then you also help understand why our body's doing what it's doing and how that influences our reactions. So it's one of the things I deeply appreciate.
Thank you.
And we've been reaching out to having folks being able to call and connect with Yvette. Yvette talks about healthy communication and relationship skills for living your most authentic, empowered, and connected self. Yvette, one of the things that I have taken with me over these last few months is responses to what we hear. And it's helped me, I believe, in my day-to-day, and especially at work, looking at my responses differently. Share with us about the 4 responses and what power we have over our response.
Okay. Yeah. So this actually comes from teachings from nonviolent communication. So this is a nonviolent communication tool that I really like using. And, as you start studying that mode of communication, we think about 2 ways of listening. 4. 2 of them are reactive ways, and 2 of them are responsive ways. So the 2 reactive default ways that we tend to listen under stress is that when somebody is speaking to you, I'm listening for blame and criticism. My focus is on how are they blaming or criticizing or judging or misunderstanding me. I'm sort of listening through that filter. That's what's happening when we're reactive.
And it could be that you've had a long time.
And it could be history.
Yeah, history of that being.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's where I'm putting my attention.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm putting my attention on that aspect of what's happening. And when I attend to that, I'm amplifying it. Okay. And I'm validating and legitimizing it. And then the 2 responses are, so I'm hearing your judgments and criticisms and evaluations and what you think I'm doing wrong and what, whatever it is. And then I have 2 choices. I either turn on myself, so I go into shame. I hear judgment, and then I move into shame. I judge myself. Your judgments agree with my already existing judgments.
You're just confirming.
I always knew I was so bad. I always knew that I was a shit, right? I always knew that, this was a terrible thing to do. And it's all me. I should check myself into therapy because there's definitely something wrong with me. So I agree with the assessment of wrongness.
And you're almost looking for it. You're looking for that affirmation that you're
confirmation bias. Confirmation bias. I believe that these bad things about me. I hear you telling me how bad I am.
3 cherries.
It's confirmed.
Okay.
Right? Exactly. The other thing we do, right, is we hear somebody blaming, criticizing, judging us, and we disagree with them, and our defensive system goes up, and we go a little bit into warrior mode, and we turn it around on them, and we do it back. Oh, you think I'm selfish. What about the times that you blah, 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 blah. Oh, you think I'm the one who doesn't listen? Let me tell you about you. Okay. So those are the 2 reactive ways. Both of them are hearing blame and criticism. One is I blame myself. The other one is I blame you. That is where the vast majority of people run their relationships I mean, that's kind of the garden variety relationships at this point in history.
And you're not getting what you want either.
No.
Either person in that relationship, if they're at that level of intensity of shaming and blaming, neither of them are having what their real needs are
Not at all.
addressed.
Not at all. We're not talking about what's actually mattering. We're trying to assign blame, and then we want the other person or ourselves to feel terrible about it, and then we think if we feel terrible, now they're going to change. That's the basic theory.
Either we feel terrible or they feel terrible, but something great will come out of being terrible.
Yeah, exactly. It's so crazy when we put it that way. We're like, and this is what we're supposed to enjoy? We don't.
Yeah.
None of us are enjoying this. Yeah.
And I gotta say, when I'm in that space of self-blame and they're validating something that I didn't even know I still carried around, then I notice it. Then I blame myself for doing that.
Yes.
And then I blame myself for that. And then there's no...
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It spirals. It goes.
does.
It turtles all the way down. It just goes forever. I'm
Yes.
like beating myself up for beating myself up.
That's right.
And there's a new muscle I gotta use. I can't
Exactly.
use that one.
No. And this is where self-compassion practice and compassion for others comes in, right? Because the alternative way of listening is a responsive form of listening. And the intention that I'm setting is that I am listening for how people are feeling and what people are needing and what would help. So the filter through which I'm hearing, the intention that I set, is drastically different. So you might still be telling me, you're so selfish, you're so unkind, you're so inconsiderate. You may still be telling me judgment, criticism, blame in that delivery. But my attention is in a different place. I'm not over-indexing on your delivery. I'm listening for, I wonder if, so what, number one, I connect with you empathically. Are you feeling frustrated? Are you really wanting more consideration? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling vulnerable? Are you feeling irritated? So I'm going to figure out what's alive in you, what's going on for you, and what's important to you about this. What are you trying to ask for in a way that is a little more indirect? Are you needing me to call you? Are you needing more predictability? So I'm actually listening for what the other person is trying to say instead of what they're saying. And then the other thing I do is inside of myself, as you're telling me all of these things, I'm staying very, very aware of how I'm feeling and what I'm needing and what would help me understand and connect with you, where I'm at. So I don't self-abandon myself. I don't just
Become a helpmate.
Exactly. I'm not going to be a martyr. I'm not
Right.
going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to keep myself fully online so that I can trust myself to also protect myself and go to bat for what's true for me and have my own experience. But I learn how to express it in a way that is proactive and gentle and constructive and concrete. And then you can speak to me however you like still. I'm still going to because this is about working with the world as it is. You just deliver it however you like, but I'll do the internal work of trying to get at what's going on underneath the surface.
And it gives you a power because
Yes.
you're almost giving yourself away when you go into the shame and blame.
Yes.
Whether you're blaming the other person, you're taking the blame yourself. You're not creating in the moment reality that allows you to, as you've said, and I love, connect
Yes.
in a way that's meaningful and powerful.
Yes.
And is that more important than just, creating a checklist of it,
Yeah.
you're wrong and I'm
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
that feels good in that moment.
Yeah.
But that doesn't create a way forward.
Yeah, and what I would say is it's simply more practical. I mean, I don't even know about important or effective. It's just more. It's so much more practical.
Especially if you want to get something
Exactly.
fed
Because listen,
within yourself.
when I'm really hurt and upset, what I'm really wanting is for you to care about it, be aware of it, and do something about it. And if the way that I'm telling you what I'm hurt and upset about is like taking you down, you no longer have the resources to help me with the thing I'm actually wanting. And so what ends up happening is we start substituting the illusion of power for empathy. And what we need to come back to in our relationships is understanding that empathy is going to run everything. And if we...
It's the juice.
It's the juice. Absolutely. And the only time that people really get invested in shame and blame and control and abuse and harmful behaviors is when they don't believe that empathy is available. And the what you were saying earlier, Rick, the sort of chicken and the egg thing here in the downward spiral is if you're hearing blame and criticism and you're moving into shame and blame yourself, it isn't going to be available. And someone in that conversation needs to start making a new move. And when one person makes a new move, all of that empathy, connection, understanding becomes a much bigger possibility. And then we can start transforming the relationship.
I know generally when I'm in that space, I feel like I'm maybe 3 years old.
Yes.
And so I've tried to start years ago using what we taught the kids to do. One element that is the juice for all of this is I feel, I hear, I think, but not you. And
100%.
that is a revelation for everybody if you can do that in those moments, but it's hard.
Yeah. And people sometimes think that's a form of weakness, but I often say, I want you to sort of channel this idea that it is called self-sovereignty. This idea of being fully in charge of yourself is one of the most powerful experiences you can have. If you're walking around thinking that I need the whole world to be arranged in a particular way so that I don't feel XYZ, you're not living an empowered life.
You've given that up to the other person.
You've outsourced all of your power.
Yeah. Yep.
Real power comes from your ability to field anything. And that also comes from being very self-contained and self-connected, which is a big, big practice.
It is, yeah.
When you've been taught to suppress your feelings, suppress your needs, not know what you want, and focus on the externals all the time. So it's big reorientation for a lot of people.
And we need to go to break, but I want to thank you for exploring connections in a new way on our Connections radio show. You bring depth and understanding, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
So stay with us. We have our friend Lynn from Michigan, who has been patiently on the line, and we will bring you Lynn in our next segment with a question that she has for you as well. So stay tuned and explore how we can get connected in new and powerful ways with Yvette. Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. We have Rick Bernardo, my co-host. And we have had wonderful, engaging conversations with Dr. Yvette Erasmus, who helps us keep learning about healthy communication and relationship skills for living our most authentic and empowered, connected self. I was sharing with Yvette how after every one of these shows, I have a new thought, and it has been a wonderful opportunity to keep learning another level of connection and being able to recognize my own triggers in a way that allows me to go, I don't need to get upset about that. I can learn something. I can do it differently and do it in a gentle way.
Yeah. And can I just riff off of that very quickly? Switching from a good-bad frame into a learning and growth frame is one of the most profound mindset shifts we can make when we're working with ourselves and others. If we can stop talking about who you are, who I am, what you are, what I am, and we can instead have a conversation about what's my current level of functioning? What can I do right now? And where am I trying to get to? What am I practicing? What am I learning? What am I healing? What am I growing into? It's a far more generous frame.
One of the shows you talked about were all kind of a glorious mess.
Yes, exactly. We are such a glorious mess. Some days less glorious.
But with that, it opens you up not to have to perform in a certain way.
Yes.
If we accept that we're a glorious mess, it opens us up for not feeling like we have to have a role to prove something.
Yeah.
And if we accept that in ourselves, I think we're much more open to accepting it in others.
Yeah.
And much more, as you've said, grace, giving each other grace about it.
I love that. Like we want to be in relationship with each other. Then we can be in relationship with our messy parts and our skilled parts, and it just becomes a much more fun game to just be in relationship.
I'm going to title my journalism Levels of Glory.
Yes, I love it. My nickname when I was growing up, my grandmother would call me Glorious Lorious.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, it was great fun. And it was very playful. And being able to connect with playfulness, I think, is part of that grace.
Yes.
And part of that acceptance. And a child is much more open to learning and growing and discovering. We sort of get, well, I've done that, know that, and then create this role that isn't necessarily who we are. Getting in touch with that is important. We have said for this show, we're opening it up to callers. The number is 952-946-6205. We have put Lynn on hold for the entire last segment because we were talking about responses. Lynn, we are grateful that you have stayed with us, and you're from Michigan, calling in to ask a question of Yvette. What question do you have, Lynn?
Well, I'm so glad that we were speaking about listening and types of listening earlier. It was really helpful to hear that because I'm in a bit of a pickle and it regards listening, and so I'm hoping I can get some tips today. I have a neighbor, an elderly neighbor. My backyard butts up against his backyard, and his name is Stan. And Stan lost his wife of 60 years, Ethel, last year, just very surprisingly, overnight, very shockingly. And Stan had been chronically ill, and Ethel had been very healthy, and so for Stan to suddenly be without his caregiver was a real shock. And Stan is a talker, and Stan really misses Ethel, and he's grieving, and he's grieving a lot, and you can still tell, like, it's been a year, but Stan seems to be in the same place he was in when Ethel first passed away. And so Stan has tomatoes in his backyard, I have tomatoes in my backyard, and it's gotten to the point where when I go out to water my tomatoes, it can take 30, 40, 50 minutes because Stan wants to talk about Ethel. And I'm just wondering, I begin noticing in myself, I want to be the kind of person who can offer Stan a lot of empathic listening, and I really do I feel so much empathy for him. And it's gotten to the point where I don't want to water my tomatoes anymore.
Stop is suffering.
Yes, exactly. And so I'm just so confused because I want to be the kind of person who is open and is so and really just there for Stan. And I am getting to the point where I just can't bear it. And so I don't know what to do.
This is a great question. I think there's lots of different ways that our friend Yvette will go, but I am anxious to hear what suggestions do you have so that you don't become a martyr.
Yeah.
That you don't give up what you need, but you do want to connect with someone.
Yeah. Is this a situation where you feel like you could just say exactly that to Stan?
Stan is like a motor. When he gets going, he gets going. And often he's crying when he's talking. So what? Just tell him, Stan, I don't have time to listen to you today?
Probably not the kindest move. No.
Oh, okay. Well, let's think about this together. Yeah. I do think that there's a way to set a boundary or to ask for what you're needing that doesn't feel rejecting or abandoning or harsh. And I might say something like, Stan, I can see that you need someone to speak to right now, and I have exactly 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And in 5 minutes, I have got to run. And you don't need to say why. You don't need to make up a lie. You just say, I have 5 minutes for you today. And then I'm going to water my tomatoes while you talk. And in 5 minutes, I'm going to run inside. And it's not because I don't care. I just don't have time. And you just do that over and over and over again. And then you soothe your own anxiety about what he's going to do with that. Mm-hmm. And you let that be his learning. You don't need to take that on for him. What does that sound like as a start?
Lynn, are you there? Okay, you're processing. Okay.
I'm here. Yes, I can imagine doing that. And it also brings up some judgment around the fact that I want to be the kind of person who helps other people find what they're needing. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I want to have more capacity to listen is really, I think, at the heart of this issue.
Okay, so a couple of things. Helping Stan get his needs met might also mean bringing in a community of people. Like sometimes we feel like it has to be me because I'm watering my tomatoes and I've suddenly been cornered. I am the only one in the world who can do this for this person. And in that moment, it's true. But in the wider moments, that's not the situation. So bringing in a wider community, it sounds like he may need that. There are other ways of helping him than giving up half an hour to the, entire day of tomato watering. Like you can have some choicefulness about how you help him. Because I hear in there, like, you want to, this piece of you wanting to be the certain kind of compassionate person. But I'd have more ways of embodying that than being hijacked whenever he wants to cry in the garden. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's super clear. Yeah.
I just know that resonates with me because one of my, I think past tense used to be the king of people pleasing. And part of that meant I wasn't honest with people in the moment.
Exactly.
I'm really thinking and feeling something, and I'm not even in that moment sometimes even listening to them because I'm torn and all of that. And I just had to practice giving up some of it and just being honest with them and then going from there.
Yeah.
You know?
And being honest
It was hard.
I really care about this. I see you're in a lot of pain. I see you're lonely. Let's get together another time and figure out, what kind of resources you have. I'd love to help you. Right now, I don't have the time. If you wanted that, right? You've got to decide for yourself in what ways you feel enjoyment in giving and where your own boundaries are. And then you can communicate them gently.
Caretaking is really challenging.
Yes.
And caretaking with Stan and his wife, I'm sure, had a lot of pressures that you're feeling as well in doing that caretaking. And it obviously impacted her too. So you have to keep yourself healthy. I worked with the American Cancer Society for many, many years, and we did programs to support the caretaker. And even though this is a small version of caretaking, you are doing caretaking. And what we also found with cancer patients is setting up rituals can be really helpful. So even if you go to Stan, I'd like to every other day or whatever, let's set aside those 10 minutes that you and I can have together. And then you're giving him something. You're giving him those 10 minutes, but you set your boundary of 10 minutes so that you're not in an unhealthy place. Because I can hear even in your voice that this is stressing you out. And it's hard on you to say no to someone who needs you. But he needs more than you, it sounds like, too, from Yvette's, good counseling in terms of how do you create community of support.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much. I like the idea of creating a ritual, and I also like the idea of bringing in broader community so that I'm not the only one who feels like, who feels the desire to care for him, because he's really a lovely man. He's not, it's just, it can be incessant sometimes. And I think bringing in more people to help carry the weight of caring for him might be a great idea.
From an artistic point of view, we often talk about good art is creativity within boundaries. So, there can be an art of conversation if you know that there's the 10 minutes. And what does that 10 minutes look like? There's 10 minutes plays that are really beautiful that express a lot because the boundary of the 10 minutes really gets to the core of what you want to express and whatnot. So you can have wonderful artistic conversations, I'm sure.
And one way that might sound is, some expression of, Stan, I really see you're in a lot of pain. You need to talk. There's a lot coming up. Whatever it is that you're sensing into that moment, expressing some care for his present moment experience. And then your dilemma. I really want to be here for you. And today I have exactly 5 minutes. And that is hard for me in some ways because I wish I had unlimited time to give you. Can I help you find another resource? It sounds like you're needing someone to talk to.
That's really helpful. Yeah, that's something that you said in there just reminded me that he's been sitting with this grief for a long time. So if I give him 5 minutes of really good listening or an hour of annoyed presence, it's not going to to solve the problem today. Like he's grieving and we're not going to solve it today.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be you, it can be you for as long as you're enjoying it and wanting to do it. And the moment you notice yourself feeling impatient or resentful, that's the moment to wake up to and then make a new move, because that's the kindest thing for both people.
I always I have to keep learning that it's not doing a service to people if I keep training them to never have boundaries either.
Exactly.
That's
they don't know where your boundaries are unless you tell them.
Exactly, but sometimes they won't listen if you try to give it. But then you got to get creative there too.
I love your new move concept that you're in a place where you're stuck. So what's the new move?
Yeah.
And the new move can be from either party, but you do have the power to make a new move
Exactly.
and to change it up.
Exactly. And you're not going to see that if you believe that your way of being is just who you are and it can't change. And this is why I keep coming back to learning and growth. Because the thing that blocks so many people is they're like, well, this is just who I am. This is my personality. Take me or leave me. This is how I am. And there is some truth to that, especially if you're believing that. But when you see it as a habitual way that I learned to be, and I can learn a new way of being, and my sense of self is grounded in more than my reactions, there's a whole world of possibilities that open up for you in that place.
Someone recently told me, and I love this, you can rewrite that script.
Yep, exactly. You can.
This is a script rewrite opportunity.
Yeah.
So how does that script get rewritten?
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end. I want to share something that I found on your website, a quote that I just love that I think summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about today. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love.
Yeah.
And that's Rainier Maria Rilke.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful quote. I love that quote.
I do too.
One of the reasons I put that on my website is because I just so deeply believe that in every moment, if we can find a way to bring a loving response to our fear, to our judgment, to our anger, to our dismissiveness, to whatever it is, if we can find a way of loving everything up, we're on the path to healing. And the more that we are resisting, judging, criticizing, controlling, suppressing, acting out, amplifying, we're just going to be repeating cycles of violence on the planet. So it's very beautiful to me to just think of it as like, I like archetypes, dragons, and they just need to be tamed, and you just need to build a relationship with them and bring your loving presence. And yes, it may be super idealistic, but it really works. I will tell you, it works so much more often than I thought it would when I began on this journey.
Well, we're very glad that you've gone on this journey and you're sharing with us your journey. For more, as we said, this is from her website, and I love her website. Go to YvetteErasmus.com, and that's spelled YvetteErasmus.com. Wonderful website, and this time always flies by.
It does.
Thank you so much for bringing your insights, your thoughtfulness. You're in the moment. You're so good about taking in the moment and guiding us to places that are very enlightening.
Thank you. I like being in the moment. I think there's a lot of presence, wisdom in the presence, and that's the practice itself.
Right, right.
And I like the reminder that we're always getting from you, Yvette, that this takes practice. It's like the old New York tourist stopping the woman on the corner. How do I get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
Yeah,
that's great.
And if you'd like to hear the last few programs that we've been doing with Yvette, you can go to our website, am950radio.com. Scroll down to the connections icon, click on that, and then look for the first of the month. We have our chance to be with Yvette, and we started in June. We have July. This is August, and we'll be back in September. So start thinking about your questions now, so that when we open it up for audience participation, we will be able to take your call. And thank you to the callers today. We appreciate your insights and your question that helped guide our show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We look forward to the next show. It's not going to actually be on the 1st. It's going to be the 2nd Saturday, because the first Saturday is Labor Day. So stay with us. We're looking forward to having Yvette come back. And thank you for joining AM 950 Radio's The Connections Radio Show.